Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Welcome to another Candid Conversations about Network Marketing. Hi, I'm BK, and as usual, on the other end, we have Dr. Wayne, who is in a slightly different place today, but same time for all of us. Hi, Dr. Wayne.
Hi BK, hi everyone. Yeah, we're in a beautiful place overlooking the water at present. It was nice waking up to the refreshing noises of birds and seagulls. We even saw a dolphin floating around, just diving in and out. So it was beautiful waking up to another location, which is fantastic.
Yeah, it's an awesome thing to be able to do that. And I think that's also one of the wonderful aspects of our business. The other day, we had a team hangout where we gathered together, a bunch of us to kind of talk about the week, share some best practices, learnings, and so on, And one of them told me that I'm sorry, I really can't attend tonight because it's my son's birthday. And then my reply to her was very simple. I said, look, that's the reason why we are in this business. We have absolute freedom to choose when and what we want to do, right? So go ahead, go and your prerogative is with your son. Spend the day with him, spend the evening with him, celebrate with your family, and then we have a replay, and you can always catch the replay, right? And that's one of the best things I love about our business, right, Dr. Wayne?
Yeah, and absolutely so. It's really is incredible. And I remember last year doing podcasts and doing different phone calls, and we were on Langkawi, and or we were in Malaysia, or I was in USA, or I was in Singapore. Like, it's just incredible where you can be in this business because your business is global, and that's just the fantastic part about it. And totally concur with everything you just said, PK. And when you really get this business, network marketing, it's just the best business to be in, especially when you've got an unbelievable, fantastic product. You've got an ethos that backs that product. It's just a nice place to be.
Yeah, most definitely. We understand, we get it. It is a misunderstood industry.
Yeah.
But put it this way, I mean, if you think about it, almost every industry in some sense is misunderstood, right? It is misunderstood, and people don't quite get it unless they are fully invested in it. And I guess this is also one of the strong motivations for Dr. Wayne and I. We want to bring value and bring and create a greater awareness about this industry, and hopefully that helps to help everyone, whether you are in it already, you're thinking about getting into it, or you are already in it. We hope that we can deliver content that is beneficial to all of us.
Yes, very true, mate.
So, if you caught last week's episode, you realize that we have done away with the famous question of the day, which is, what are we going to talk about? Let me just give a bit of pre-frame about that, because it's not that we are not asking about that anymore, but we have decided to kind of improve our production value. And again, what we are trying to do on this show is also to demonstrate the fact that a lot of times we get going first, but as we go along, we can always improve the production value of the project that you're doing. Progression is perfection is what we always say. And so since last week, we have started to produce show notes, right? Dr. Wayne has been very kind to produce show notes. So I kind of have a sneak peek into our topic for the day, so I don't have to ask him his favorite question, which is, hey, what are we going to talk about today, Doc?
No, we don't. So today we're going to be talking about, we're going to be looking at broccoli, Elton John, and why mum may like red, for example, or may not like red, which is an interesting topic. And then we're going to go into some really important concepts. We're going to go into the concept of how memories are actually made. And we're going to talk about two important parts of the brain that does this. Going to talk then about the concept of hoarding, the law of resistance. Then we're going to go into a little bit of brain waves, and then the answer. What is the answer of unlocking this chaos so it becomes nice and rhythmical, or as a sports person would say, you're in the zone. So it's going to be an exciting podcast that we put together today for all those listening, and I'm really looking forward to moving forward. So The first one is how subconscious memories get into the brain and how they cause chaos. And there's two important brain facts, or two important parts of the brain we need to understand. One is the amygdala and the other is the hippocampus. So these are both are within the limbic system, and the amygdala is recognized as a component of the limbic system and plays a role in emotion and behavior. The amygdala helps coordinate responses to things in your environment, especially those that trigger an emotional response, especially around fear and anger. And remembering last podcast, we talked about in ancient medicine, the liver being the general. So if it's a fear emotion, the liver will go, okay, you're an emotion that belongs to the kidney, for example, and therefore it'll go into first the different areas of the kidney to show dysfunction if it goes beyond the emotion or emotional constraints. If it's anger, it's more to do with liver and gallbladder. So the liver then goes, oh, you're a liver gallbladder emotion, and then it actually moves it through the muscles, the connective tissue, and then it can even create insomnias. And we learned how it can create all different concepts around ill health as well. Now, the problem with the amygdala is when it gets a lot of emotional, and we'll go through this a little bit more shortly, but when it gets a lot of emotional realities put into it and we hold these emotions, what happens then is it also then grabs tentacles. So one emotion, say, that's brought into us maybe of great anger, it will then have tentacles attached to that. And what happens then to the amygdala, it actually becomes inflamed. So the size of the amygdala just grows a little bit. And when this happens, it then creates more and more things like anxieties and panic attacks. And we talked about motivation lack of motivation, etc. So the amygdala now basically, unfortunately, gives the negative in terms of that emotional, it fires so easily because it's inflamed. And then we have the hippocampus, and the hippocampus is a part of the brain embedded deep in the temporal lobe or the cerebral cortex, and is once again an important part of the limbic system. And it basically regulates motivation, emotional learning, and memory. Now, importantly here, as the amygdala becomes more chronically inflamed, the hippocampus actually, the way it shows it's not working properly, it actually starts to shrink. And we start then noticing, we talked about it last week in terms of lack of motivation, but also in terms of we start slowly losing memory and focus and clarity. Where did I leave the keys? What was I supposed to do today? I had a really important thing to do. And this is what then happens with the hippocampus. So anything to chime in there so far, BK?
Yeah, so some big words there, and those of us who may be listening in, do note that we have show notes. If you want to download the show notes, do visit us at networkmarketerpodcast.com. We'll put out the link later on, right? So, so we want to just help people get along, and Dr. Wayne was just mentioning some really big words that perhaps we may not be fully aware of, if we are not in the field of neuro science or we are not neurosurgeons, okay? But I kind of remember, Dr. Wayne, just to clarify that it's often referred to as the amygdala is like the reptile brain in us or something like that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes,
it is kind of, it's one of the most base instincts that we have. It controls the fight and flight thing as well. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. So our most basic emotions, our most reptilian instincts are controlled by the amygdala. That's one side. And I think another thing that when Dr. Wayne was sharing about this, we talked about this as well in another episode or another program that we have. And I was kind of thinking that the way to help myself understand this was that if you think about Dr. Wayne says an event, and then it creates tentacles and it latches on to multiple things. It's kind of like if you think about one of your favorite childhood memories, or no, let's say you don't think about it, but let's say you walk past a certain place and there's a very nice whiff of baked cookies, And the moment you smell that whiff of baked cookies, it takes you back to a location where you can vividly remember the street, the noise, the sound, even the people, and some of the things that were going on at that point in time, right? So
Yeah.
that is what Dr. Wayne is talking about, right? Because how did that single whiff of that nice smelling cookie, right? Freshly baked cookie, take you all the way back in time to a memory, and that is so vivid with so many multiple facets. So the reason is because when that memory was created, it also attached itself to sound, to sight, to color, to noise, to even like the feeling of the wind on your skin and stuff like that, right, Dr. Wayne? Am I right?
Yes, exactly. And we'll be digging deeper into that and how these tentacles then manifest themselves and what they can do to even the functioning of your day, for example. It's really quite interesting, and I'm sure you'll find it intriguing when we go through that. But yeah, very true. And then what happens, BK, then and listeners, is that think of that's just one emotion. So you imagine someone now who's whatever age they may be, say they've got 20 emotions, they could have 5 different tentacles attached to each emotion, and that's a huge amount of memory that's being stored. And I'm only saying 5, there could be 20. There could be so many tentacles attached to that one memory. And as mentioned, what happens then, the amygdala, when it has all these different memories that it's storing, it then actually inflames. And because of that inflammation, it then unfortunately can't control the emotions. So then they become uncontrollable. So this is the anger that comes out in bursts, or just the emotional roller coaster that happens, panic attacks, anxieties, etc., because the amygdala is full. And then as the amygdala unfortunately swells, the hippocampus then shrinks and then causes the memory challenges and lack of motivation, lack of focus, and all this as well. So yeah, very, very true. Very true.
So the
So
phrase when we say that someone is thinking small is quite literally correct. Is that correct?
yeah. And that's probably where we'll go now. And remembering everything we're talking about is no one's fault. It's just the way that we're wired, especially when we're young. So just to put this into perspective, so think of an iceberg. And as we know with an iceberg, we've got something like 10% above, and then the 90% is then below. And it's basically the same with our consciousness. Our consciousness is 10%, and our subconscious is then 90%. And 90% of our subconscious was programmed prior to the age of 7. So from what you're just saying there, BK, small, yes, because we're basically a sponge when we're prior to the age of 7, and we take in all these emotions, and a lot of these emotions, they drive us, and they can create huge problems. And another way of looking at it, I want you to think of even the computer you're looking at now. So think of an iceberg, a computer. We'll talk about the computer. The screen you're looking at is the visual screen. And then the operating system is then the driver of literally what happens on the computer screen. So think of the computer screen or your consciousness are the same. So I think of the computer screen only represents probably 10% of your computer. Consciousness is about the same, whereas our operating system is 90%. And of course, an operating system in a computer can get a virus. And where do we see the virus? We actually see that virus on the computer screen. The mouse mightn't work. We might get blue lines. We might get a blue screen. We might get just things not working correctly. And it's the same with the subconscious mind. When the amygdala gets full of these memories because they're programmed prior to the age of 7, what happens then is they get triggered like a virus, and then it creates a outward expression in the consciousness or in our behavior that was triggered. It was literally triggered. And we do go a lot more in detail into this in the 5 hidden reasons why most network marketers fail, and how you don't have to. So we've got a program around that. We go in a lot more detail if people are interested. But just for now, the importance is the understanding that we've got 10% of us is conscious, 90% of us is subconscious, or think of a computer screen and think of an operating system. Or think of an iceberg, 10% above, 90% below. And most of the grunt in a computer or an iceberg is 90% below, and the same as our being. Our subconscious holds so much positive, but it also can hold so much negative. And I love the way ancient medicine describes it. You know, there's only one cause to all disharmony, one cause to all disease, one cause of why a network marketer is not getting to the ranks that they need to, or would want, or would like to. And there's only one cause to all relationship breakdown. And it's called in ancient medicine the mistake of the internet, the mistake of the intellect. And I love the words because it actually gives you total power, or gives you the ability to think I can move beyond this. Whereas Western medicine, if we listen to their phrase, 90% of who we are is pre-programmed prior to the age of 7, which kind of takes away responsibility. So it's a fantastic way that the ancients have put this together. And remembering the ancients have put this together 4,000 plus years ago. And Western medicine's only just starting to realize and understand this whole phenomena. So anything there, PK?
Yeah, I think it's just wonderful. Like, I think we have mentioned this before in other episodes, right? And I think one of the great challenges that we have as a human person is we do want to aspire to greater heights and aspire to greater things. And sometimes we are not where we are, but the moment we are aware, and this is what this podcast is all about, right? We want to bring awareness. Once you are aware, you then can take steps to make changes and go towards the right direction, or a better direction that you have chosen for yourself. Same thing with what Dr. Wayne was talking about just now. Again, because my background is linguistics, I do love words, and especially sometimes I kind of dwell. I really go into the words and look at them and look at, hey, this is very interesting. And I'd really like the word mistake, because it means that it can be corrected, right? A mistake can be corrected. We can change it. And also, Dr. Wei, I love your analogy just now about computers, because again, I think if you think about this, those of us listening in, if you think about it this way, remember when you first buy your brand new computer, whether it's a Mac or a Windows machine, the very first time you turn it on, it starts up very fast. It works blazingly fast. Everything is smooth. But over a period of time, as you work on it, as you install new software, and as you install sometimes what we call bloatware, bloat meaning bloated, right? Bloatware. You find that your systems get slower and slower and slower, and it doesn't perform the way you thought it was going to perform, right? So it's kind of like life. It's kind of like us, right? When we are born into this world, brand new, we have so much capacity for growth and so much potential. And then, unfortunately, the environment we are in, the people that is around us, it is not because of bad intentions. Sometimes they download softwares into us, right? Yes. And that bloats that those are bloatware, and it kind of hampers the performance of the machine, which is us. So thank you, Dr. Wayne, for that analogy, because it's so true. And what we need to do sometimes for our computers is we need to actually do a fresh reset and remove some of the bloatware, go back to factory settings. I think that's what we can do here as well for our mind and our brain and our actual person. Let's do a fresh reset.
Yes, and at the end of this podcast, I'll be talking about how to actually look at that reset for us as well. But the next thing that I'd like to go into is how do these memories come in? And I'm going to use broccoli as an example, and I'm going to use the example of think of each person listening to this now, you're 3 years of age. And this particular day, up until this particular day, you're able to leave your broccoli on the plate because mum and dad know you don't like it, but they hope one day you will eat the broccoli because it's left on the plate and you're seeing mum and dad eating the broccoli and enjoying it. Up until this day, that was the case. However, now mum and dad have read up about broccoli and what it can do to the human body, how it improves gene expression, especially the vitamin D absorption, how it can actually help with the liver in terms of phase 1, phase 2 detoxification, even phase 3. It just goes on and on. They've read all this great research, and now they want to impart this new knowledge onto you as a 3-year-old. You go, yeah, okay, I don't know what this is about. But all they want you to do is eat the broccoli. And after an hour of just backwards and forwards, and you're crying and you're upset, you eat the broccoli and you go over to a pot plant, you have a little spew, you come back and you go, here's my broccoli. You throw the plate back into their face. And you have this emotional, just huge letdown. Now, in this state of subconscious emotional letdown, you now bring in tentacles. You now bring other awarenesses. You notice that dad has got glasses on. You notice that, you don't notice, but the subconscious notices. So dad's got glasses on. In the background, Elton John's playing. Mum's got a red dress on. You think of the pot plant, and you also, on the bottom of the plate, is an embossed emblem of the Vikings, for example, because mum and dad are Vikings fans. And mum slams down the fist and says, if you don't eat your broccoli, you're not going to be healthy. You've got to eat your broccoli because it helps you to be healthy. If you don't eat it, you won't be healthy, and you won't be healthy for the rest of your life, rest of your life. Now, what's happened now is you now, some 20, 30, 10, 40 years later, you might eat your broccoli, but you do remember something about broccoli, or might even still hate broccoli. But broccoli, you still remember to an extent. But you do not remember any of the other tentacles. However, you think this is your personality, meaning, hey, I just really don't like women in red. When women in red dress in front of me, I don't like my wife wearing a red dress. I don't like being in a red dress if you're a woman. Then you might see a pot plant that's basically, one of those happy plants, for example. And every time you see a happy plant, now you can get emotionally upset. I haven't been very well for a long period of time. And there's something about glasses. I can't wear glasses. Now, each one of those subconscious thoughts you actually think is you some 10, 20, 30 years later. It's not you. These were actually imposed upon you at a young age, meaning a mistake of the intellect. And today you haven't been very well for a long, long time. And say, for example, you wake up today, you're feeling absolutely fantastic. Remember, we're in the future now, 10, 20, 30 years ahead. And you wake up really great, you're feeling good, and then you walk into a shop and Elton John's playing in the background, and as you walk out, you walk past a lady in red dress, and someone who you just spoken to up the street has got glasses on, and you just go back to your office or you go back to home and you wonder why you just don't feel so good. You're feeling emotional, you just don't feel motivated. And this is how we get triggered all the time. And remembering 90% of us gets triggered this way, the same way as those people who are really negative about network marketing. Somehow, some way they have been triggered, or they have been programmed from an external source about network marketing. It's a Ponzi scheme. It's a pyramid scheme. If they actually looked up pyramid and Ponzi, they'd actually find the truth about what it actually is. But because it's been driven home to them from an emotional state of mind, they have blinkers on, so therefore they can't have a rational thought about network marketing in terms of its positive. And literally, I know what that looked like because I was in that personally when I go back many, many years. I did have network marketing blinkers on until I delved deeply into what it meant and how it could actually improve one's life. So that's how, now this can then happen with wealth. It can then happen with relationships. It can then happen with your sport. It can then happen with anything that you want to achieve in life. You will have these emotional anchors with their tentacles that can be holding you back. So very interesting, isn't it, BK?
Yeah, it is one of the most fascinating subjects that I've been encountering. Now, just to perhaps there will be some of us on the podcast listening or watching the replays that might feel the same way. So let me just be the voice for you in a sense, of the audience. When I first encountered subjects like this, in my mind, it was kind of like thinking, that sounds a lot like hocus pocus, right? That sounds a bit airy fairy, and that sounds a bit too esoteric for me. And that was how I felt, right? But I have also been fortunate to,
That was a program.
yeah. So, but I've also been fortunate enough to have been influenced from young that always keep an open mind. And if something comes to you from more than one angle, or something comes to you from more than one person, you might want to look at it, seriously. Because if, let's say, John talks to you about something and then you dismiss it and say it's hocus pocus, and then Mary comes to you and talks about the same thing, and then Sally comes to you, and then Margaret another time, and William comes to you, you need to kind of pay attention. Because somebody or someone or somewhere, someone is trying to communicate something to you, and they are trying to get to you in multiple ways. So that has always been my case, and I've always believed in that. And this whole topic that Dr. Wayne is obviously an expert in, and I'm starting to get a lot into as well myself, was something like that for me. It came to me from multiple angles, multiple people, multiple sources. And I told myself, yeah, sounds like this is something that I need to look into seriously. And you'll be surprised, because once you open up yourself to learning and understanding, and there's so much science involved in this. And I was always a science person. It is fascinating, and I really appreciate Dr. Wayne sharing all this knowledge with us. And again, this is something that can help us all become better at this industry we love called network marketing. So thanks, Dr. Wayne.
And even going deeper into what you just said, I'll go one step further. It was actually your intuition or your subconscious that was actually sending out an alert that was attracting these people to you to get you to look at what you're doing in another way.
Awesome. I'm glad somebody's in charge, not me.
Yeah. So, and we do have more about the relationships and health and all the rest of it. If people do want to listen to that five hidden reasons as well. So just to put this into genetic expression now. So we've talked about ancient medicine last time with motivation and liver being the commander. So let's just look at genetic expression, epigenetics. So, and from science, they actually say that genes are acquiring trillions of new mutations every day. Not hundreds and thousands, not 10 or not 20 or not billions, but trillions of new mutations every day. And guess what determines which way these mutations go? I'll get to that shortly. For every gene blueprint in your body, it can make over 3,000 different versions of a protein from the same blueprint based on the way someone responds to life. So imagine that. So a gene can have 3,000 different versions of a protein, and these gene mutations occur at trillions every day. So if we've got happy thoughts, what generally happens is serotonin is made, and therefore we can express ourselves more positively, and therefore we can have better motivation, we can have better business success, we can have better health, we can also then have better relationships. However, on the other side of it, if it's more stressful thoughts or if it's more unhappy thoughts, therefore less serotonin is made. And what happens then is these genes now, unfortunately, will express themselves more negatively. Now, doesn't this sound like what we talked about last time in terms of what ancient medicine's been saying for thousands of years? Western medicine have only just coined the word epigenetics, epi meaning above, meaning there's something else programming our genes, and which now epigenetics has been now um, or closely described as the environment then impacts our genetic expression. And that's what ancient medicine's been saying for thousands upon thousands of years. I just love the way that Western medicine then has come in and used different words to describe the same phenomena, which is fascinating, really fascinating. So what happens now is that with these new gene mutations, with these new thoughts and all the rest of it, and we'll go back to the amygdala, for example, the concept here I'd like for you to think of, I want you to think of a hoarder. So if you have a hoarder and you walk into a hoarder's room, all you're going to see is boxes and boxes and boxes. So if I walked into your amygdala right now, all I'd see is boxes of memories with these tentacles attached. And if I'm in the hoarder's house, I wouldn't be able to see the kitchen, I wouldn't be able to see the family room, I wouldn't be able to see the bedrooms. Now, just to put this into some sort of context, if I'm walking into a kitchen, that represents your relationship to foods. Or health. If I'm walking into the family room, this is your relationship to family and your friends, etc. If we're walking into the bedroom, then it's got to do with your sexuality, etc. So think of every aspect of a house then can be represented in the brain. So the amygdala has, in my way of thinking, the amygdala then puts different boxes in different areas as well. But the concept here I want you to grasp is that all these thoughts that are now basically being thrown into the amygdala, not because of anyone's fault, it just happens, especially when there's emotion attached. It basically, think of it like a hoarder. Your brain is now hoarding and it swells. And this is what we then call the chronic inflammation that occurs in the amygdala. So hopefully we've got that concept of hoarding with regards to how that then affects the amygdala. So from there, the next important thing now is just to really understand that we've now got a fair idea of why 90% of our consciousness has been programmed prior to the age of 7, meaning mistake of the intellect, and why a lot of people don't succeed in life. And I'll throw something out there, and this is the next bit I just want to touch on in this area because I only want to touch on a little bit because this is another, probably I can spend a day just talking about the law of resistance. But I'll go right out on a limb here and say, and I've said it a number of times in other podcasts and other areas as well, unfortunately, goal setting, unfortunately, law of attraction, law of the secret and these type of things don't work. And everyone I just saw drop their bottom lip, they don't work because we don't understand the law of resistance. When we understand the law of resistance, the goal setting, all these other, the law of attraction, the secret, all work unbelievably. So the law of resistance basically states whatever you resist in life, you'll attract. Whatever, you may have heard it this way, whatever you whatever you resist persists. So say, for example, you want to be the top network marketer or the top in your business, whatever it might be. But if you have an underlying subconscious thought that is still in the amygdala that basically is just pulsing out this memory of network marketers take advantage of people, network marketers scams, network marketers, the products don't work very well and they're overpriced. It's a Ponzi scheme. Now, remembering this is deep in the subconscious and those tentacles. And if that is in your subconscious, this is your resistance. Okay? And you've got to be okay with that. You've got to be neutral with those thoughts. And I'll be helping you shortly on how we can get out of that. But first of all, I really just want you to get this concept that the law of resistance overrides all other laws in terms of attraction, in terms of goal setting, in terms of the secret, etc. When we get the law of resistance, we can change all that quite easily. So that's the major concept there. Now, to prove what I just said, if this was not true, why is 80 to 90% of people basically on the pension or not living the life of their dreams when they get to retirement age. I'm sure at 20 or 30 or 40, they didn't set goals to say, I want to be on the pension. I only just want enough money to live by when I retire. But that's where 80 to 90% of the Western world live, because of this law of resistance. So BK, it's quite an interesting law, isn't it? I know we've had quite a few discussions around it.
Yeah, and Dr. Wei, I think we might have to do an entire program around the law of resistance, because we've been getting questions from people about that. What is exactly the law of resistance? How do we understand it, work around it, and all those things. So let's really put our mind behind it, and we may come up with something, right, Doc?
Yes, most definitely. We will definitely do that, because it has been asked, and it's a law that is so important, so important. So now I'm just going to touch briefly on frequencies, because remembering everything is basically a frequency. Everything on planet Earth is basically mathematical numbers. So in terms of frequency in the brain, we've got delta, theta, alpha, beta, and gamma. So delta is the slowest, and its frequency is measured between 1 to 3 hertz. So, and it's the slowest but the highest amplitude in brain waves. And this is what we experience when we are asleep. As we're now waking up in theta, it's 4 to 7 hertz. And these represents the dreamy, spacey state of the mind, is associated with mental inefficiency. There's very low levels. Theta brain wave activity is very relaxed state, representing the twilight zone between waking and sleeping. Then alpha brain waves is 8 to 12 hertz. These are slower but larger waves, and they are associated with the state of relaxation and represent the brain shifting into idling gear, waiting to respond when needed. If we close our eyes and begin picturing something peaceful, there is an increase in alpha waves. Beta is between 13 and 38 waves, and these are small, faster brain waves and associated with state of mental intellectual activity, outward focus, concentration. This is the basic state of alertness. And then gamma is between 39 and 42 hertz. And this one is where we have attention and focus, and we have really heightened senses of smell, taste, and hearing. So it's mental processing, perception. And of course, when we wake and when we go to sleep, these basically reverse. So when we're going to sleep, it's basically, when we're waking, so when we're waking, it goes, so I just got to go. When it's waking, it goes delta, theta, alpha, beta, gamma. And the interesting phenomena here, BK, I don't know if you've ever heard of this before, or listeners, is that as we wake, serotonin is the major neurotransmitter that's made, and as well as cortisol. And cortisol peaks at around about that 8 o'clock, 8:30, 9 o'clock in the morning. And it peaks at this early time because this is when we should feel the most refreshed and feel out at our best. And if you know you've got a hormonal challenge in cortisol and serotonin if you can't wake up very fresh. But interesting, cortisol loves light and loves green, which is daylight. And then as we then go into sleep, it then reverses into gamma, beta, alpha, theta, delta. And then what happens now, the hormones of serotonin and cortisol now actually decrease, and melatonin is made. And guess what? Melatonin doesn't like light, and it doesn't like green. Melatonin likes dark. And of course, we can make melatonin, and this is where we now can actually help our brainwave frequencies, because in meditation, we can create the vacuum of darkness to allow our brain to basically get into more of these waves, these frequencies that help us to deal with moving us from one area to another in terms of, so say for example, if we're meditating and the goal is to connect this physical energy in a way that now is getting less and less, okay, so it's moving out, but we want then the meditation side of things, the activation to occur in the brain at another level. And this is where we then achieve, this is when we can then achieve our goals. And I actually teach this to elite sports people to be able to do it with eyes open, because they need to be able to get into that intuitive zone, and we've heard of it called the zone of sport. They need to get into that intuitive zone with their eyes open. And yes, you can do it. Now, the key here is that one of the things we talk about right at the beginning of the 5 hidden reasons, BK, remember this, we talk about the shocking truth. You know everything that we have already spoken about. And I'm sure you've heard of all this before. The shocking truth and the answer to everything we've spoken about is taking action to allowing yourself, and the word here is action, to allow yourself to go into meditation. To go into meditation, when is the best time to meditate? In the morning is the best time to meditate. And ancient medicine says that the best way to attain great health, great acuity, great alertness is to never miss a sunset, and then sunrise, never miss a sunrise, and thereafter meditate. So some really important gems in there to help you to move forward from being the mistake of the intellect to now actually taking control of your life in a way that is so positive. And the answer is taking action and actually doing. And when you are in this state, so when we're teaching or when we're showing you this doing it while you're awake, the way you do it while you're awake is being alert to what you're saying. Like while I've been doing this, and I'm sure BK as well, what we're doing is we're alert to what I'm saying because I'm in the now. The more I am in the now, what happens then, it sets up this zone. It sets up a frequency that allows the whole subconscious to let go of any of those negative frequencies, any of those negative tentacles that you are dealing with by being in the now. So think of it like if you're there's no such thing as stress. Stress is only because you're in the past or the future. If you're in the now, there is no such thing as stress. When you're in the now, what happens if you take action while you're in the now, you now change the old emotional state of you going into the future. Really, really important concept to understand. So the goal is to be connected to the energy of the future through what we've just said. By being in the now, you now actually put an energetic transference that allows your goals that you've already set and you already know about, you already know the 4 concepts of goal setting. And then what you do then, because of that, the next bit, because you're in the now, the future becomes exactly what you've goal set it and what you haven't goal set. If you haven't goal set it, therefore the future can be a little bit haphazard, unfortunately.
It's fascinating stuff, what Dr. Wayne just shared. And, you know, when I was listening to him and talking about all this, it's gonna be interesting to wrap your head around, but I sincerely hope that you try and do, because when you think about it, it is a fairly interesting concept, and I'm sure we can get into it a lot more detail next time. But when you worry, when you recall mistakes that you have made in the past, and you replay all these memories, you are stuck in the past. Okay, you're letting the old things that have happened. You're being trapped in the prison of the past, right? And therefore you can't move forward. That is one side of it. But some of us also do the other thing, which is we worry about things that have not happened in the future. And both of these actions, we actually trap ourselves in a place that we are not supposed to be. So one is a past that has already been gone and you can't relive it. Why are you punishing yourself twice or multiple times for something that's already happened that cannot be changed, right? That's one. But the other side of it, the flip side of it, is when people worry about something in the future that has not happened, and then that causes them stress and grief and anxiety. And again, that also traps you. But instead, when you focus on the here and now and the current present moment, it's the only time that you are actually operating in a space that we come to call as the unknown, right?
Yes.
Because you really do not know what is going to happen in this moment now, because you have decided to live in the now. And like what Dr. Wayne was sharing just now, being very present, being alert, and being mindful that you are living in the present moment and deciding what to do at this moment in time is the only way that we can connect with our huge human potential, that is our true future potential. Right, Dr. Wayne?
Exactly. Well said. Yeah. And
yeah, I can honestly tell you, and I know some of you who are listening in, perhaps this might be the first time you're encountering the subject matter that we are talking about today. I get it. I was like that. I was feeling that, oh, this sounds too esoteric for me. But if you really dive right deep into this and keep an open mind, we'll be happy to collect. Maybe Dr. Wei, what we can do is we can collate a short series of materials for them to look into, right? We could do that, right? So that's something we can do, and we provide it for you, and go into and dive into the topics, and you'll be surprised. It will be quite a fascinating journey for you. So I think that nicely wraps up our episode for today. Dr. Wayne has said that he will cover some of the topics that we mentioned today in greater detail in future episodes. So subscribe to our podcast, our RSS feeds, and all that. I'm going to put down the links if you're watching the replay. If you're not, then you can find this episode as well as the previous archive episodes at networkmarketerpodcast.com. networkmarketerpodcast.com. That is where you can find all our episodes and show notes as well. Just connect with us there. That's one. And also, if you're liking the content here, and if you want to go deeper into it, we already do have a program called 5 Hidden Reasons why most network marketers fail and why you do not have to. You can find that at 5hiddenreasons.com. So thank you, Dr. Wayne. It was a fascinating episode. We dive into a lot of interesting topics today. So we're going to take us out with a little bit of new production value. We are ending our episodes with a little song, right? A jingle.
Thanks, VK. Thanks, everyone. Have a great week.
Bye, everyone.